Okay, Rutgers goes into Champaign, Illinois. Can they beat Illinois and return the favor from last year's crazy ending? Let's get to it.
Double A gap blitz. They bring the house. Here's the throw. It is a throw. It's caught by Bryant. First down. 15-10. House.
Okay, so Rutgers goes to Illinois this weekend to try and beat an Illinois team that's a little bit underperforming from where they thought Illinois would be competing for college playoff. At some point this year, they were ranked number 9. Coming off that crazy ending last year where instead of letting Illinois try and kick a 53-yard field goal into swirling winds that absolutely had no chance, especially when you looked at how the ball was reacting that day. After a good drive by Rutgers and Athan to take the lead, but that was one for the ages. So when we think about Rutgers and Illinois, that's the game you'll think about. But there's another one that I think about, and I want to say, what was it, 2005? With might have been the first of the Leonard Leap and a 33-30 loss at Illinois. But that highlight reel of Brian Leonard leaping over the defender for a 78-yard touchdown run made ESPN and went viral and kind of started the whole Leonard Leap thing. So those are a couple things that I think about. Nonetheless, these teams are kind of similar. And Mike from the Night Report, he has a term that he calls these teams, but forget what that is. But we're kind of like the poor man's version of Illinois. Both teams kind of want to be able to run the ball, but they have productive passing games. The irony is that both teams are kind of underperforming down on rushing yardage, and both passing games have been driving the offense of this year. With I think at quarterback though, Illinois has a slight advantage because Luke Altmaier, really accurate passer, 71.2%, and 15 touchdowns, maybe 3 interceptions, and he's going to be a problem for us. He's going to hit those quick outs. He's going to hit those passes underneath. If it's third down and, we don't get the rush or we almost get there and miss, he's going to hit those passes underneath. He's accurate. And unlike Ryan Brown from Purdue, he's not going to miss. So I think he's got 15 and 2, 15 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He has like a 1.2% interception rate. Averages 9 yards per target and almost 10 yards per target adjusted. So he's going to be able to hit the mid-level and deep passes. So far, secondary is struggling, and they're nowhere they're nowhere to be seen on the continent. Luke Altmaier is going to be a problem. Mike Athan has underrated mobility. He's not going to run the ball. He's not that guy that's going to have design runs, but he led, as I said in my last video, he led Illinois in rushing last week against Washington, which isn't really what you want to do. It kind of tells me that he had to improvise, but he has that capability. So if he does that and it's third down and you can't get him to the ground and he takes off, that's going to be a problem for us as well, because we well know our issues with getting the quarterback to the ground. And, Athan, he is more of the gunslinger. He's not the polished pocket passer that's managing the game and knows where he's going to go, and he's going to deliver that ball accurately and with touch and have a really good ball placement every time. That's not Ethan. Ethan is having that kind of year we thought he had to have in order for us to be successful on offense. He's passing 62, 63%. Remember, we've always said he got to 60%. We stand a pretty good chance. Of course, that meant that we were going to have our usual solid defense. So Ethan's 63%, 12 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Interception rate, just under 2%, so he's not bad either. 8.5 yards per attempt. And adjusted, it's kind of odd. His adjusted rate is about the same. But Illinois, where we're also similar is that they're struggling on. It's not their offense; they're struggling on defense, like we are. A lot of it's similar issues. Have some injuries in the secondary. Guys aren't playing well. They're third from the bottom in the Big Ten in total defense, just ahead of us and Purdue. Gee, what a shock! And their offense is kind of middle of the pack. But what they do is, the difference between us is that Illinois isn't going to have a brain fart at particular times of the game when the game's on the line. Look, we can be Illinois if we had just not committed that defensive penalty against Iowa. We didn't. There's no guarantee we were going to hit the field goal and win against Minnesota, but there was another key mistake, key breakdown at a key moment where we have a couple more wins and we're 6-2 instead of 4-4, and we're at the same level of Illinois, and this really would be that game that's going to be a barometer going forward of where not just Rutgers but both teams stand in the Big Ten hierarchy. Are we going to be, the top, quarter of the conference? No. But we could be in that top third, above the top half, and on our way to credibility, being those 9-3 teams every year who are going to lose to Ohio State and Oregon. I think both programs would see that as a positive trajectory going forward. Nonetheless, we'll go through some stats. By the way, I hope you got through the weather. Yesterday was crazy with all the rain. It's still kind of overcast this morning and kind of windy. Might have been helpful if we were actually playing in Piscataway this weekend. But nonetheless, Illinois points per game, they're slightly better than us, a little over 30 points per game. That's kind of middle of the pack. That puts them in the 40 somewhere yards per game. They're kind of opportunistic. They don't roll up Oregon type of yardage. They're about 76th in that category. But points per play, when they're efficient on their drives and with their offense. So they stick the ball in the end zone. And they third down conversions, they're pretty decent. Fourth down, they're very good, top 25, 67% on fourth down conversions. So if they have an opportunity, they have a good chance of making it. And red zone scoring, they're kind of middling, in the 50s, but that's better than what we're doing. When you look at our offense, we're averaging about 27 points per game, and it's, in the Big Ten, a lot of people are predicting for this game, as they have a lot of games so far this season. We're predicting shootouts, and they haven't materialized. We can't get over the 28-point hump in the playing Big Ten competition. And a lot of people, I see a lot of predictions out there, 45-35, 38-31, 40-34. We haven't shown we can get over 28 points in the Big Ten yet. So I'm a little skeptical. I'll see it when I believe it. We go into this game a 12.5-point underdog. Some people feel that's inflated, but I can actually see a scenario where we lose 41-27. We can't get over that 27, 28-point hump in the Big Ten. We look at times, it looks like we've solved some of our defensive efficiencies and then have breakdowns at other times at bad moments where Illinois goes on a run and has a couple or three drives in a row where they score and they pull away. I can see that happening, but I could also see it being a kind of game like last year. What was it last year? 38-31, something like that. Offensively, we're 65th in the country, averaging 27 points per game. It's probably not probably, it is lower than that in the Big Ten Conference. Defensively, we're giving up 34 points per game. And you can imagine where that is. That's 115th. But, I got to say, Illinois' defense having the same or similar issues. They're 102nd in scoring defense, 97th in yards per game, 100th in yards per play. Third down conversion, we better convert because Illinois is 131st in the country in third down defense, 99th in fourth down defense. And red zone scoring, here's interesting. They're 123rd. Our red zone scoring stinks. I think we've improved a little bit. And I think we're around number 89, 90 right now. So which weakness, once again, like we talked about with Purdue last week, whose weakness will prevail? So if we get in a red zone against Illinois, we got to stick it in there. And I know not having Ian might be a problem, but we'll get to some of that later on. Illinois' defense, not great. Similar issues to we have. They have sort of like a bend but don't break kind of defense. And they break a little bit. They don't break like we do. So that's where they're a little bit better in that regard. And their red zone scoring and their ability to put the ball in the end zone a little better, a little more efficient in their passing game. And, offense, we were talking about Rutgers offense, red zone scoring is 107th. Fourth down conversion is pretty good. We're 70%, but we're usually in positions where we're behind and got nothing to lose. This kind of happened in the Oregon game where we were going for it because we really had no other choice. And but both teams struggle with getting production down in the running game. I think we're only 73rd in yards per rush, even though we like to run the ball. And Illinois, believe it or not, they have a three-headed monster. They're 119th. So what we have to avoid, and we saw this against Purdue, who was not a great running team, they gashed us. We can't have something happen against Illinois where we stop them for 2 yards, stop them for 3 yards, and then they gash us for a 30-yard run or a long touchdown. So Illinois on offense, they rushing yards per game, they're only 115. So they're going to be watching the Purdue tape to see what they did effectively, and that's basically Rutgers not setting the edge. So if we don't do that, Illinois, despite not being a great running team as far as yards per play and productivity from series to series, will have some opportunities. And defensively, Illinois is better against the run. So when it comes to yards, rushing yards per game, they're kind of middling. They're in the 60s somewhere. They yards per rush, you can get some big plays against them. Now 4.5 yards per play. I think we were giving up over 5. So that puts them like in the 80s in the yards per rush. But at the end of the game, that bend but don't break philosophy keeps the opposition from rolling up, 200 yards rushing. If we're going to have some success, I think we're going to need that balance in addition to being able to take some shots downfield. Nonetheless, in the passing game is where the Illini offense does well. Obviously, Luke Altmaier, he's going to be when it comes to completion percentage, a top 10 quarterback. And yards per pass. We talked about 9.5 yards per pass. It's 15th in the country. Passes per game. They don't throw it a lot. It's not going to be, an air raid offense. They're only 78th in that regard. But they're efficient, and he's going to hit those out patterns. He's going to hit those crossers. He'll hit the deep patterns. As we talked about, his interception rate is very low, and passing yards per game, he is at 260, is number 32. So even though they don't throw it a lot, they extend their drives, they make their plays, and they're able to put the ball in the end zone and average a little over 30 points per game. Defensively is where they struggle with the pass. I'd like to see how we're going to attack Illinois, because when it comes to completion percentage, they're 128th. When it comes to yards per pass play, they're 97th. Number of passes per game, 112. So teams like to throw it against them. I have a feeling we'll take our shots and we'll be somewhat aggressive. But again, I hope we have some balance. Passing yards per game, they're 114th. They don't percentage of interceptions thrown against them. They're very bad. They're 131st. They haven't been. I had the guy on from Illinois on the night report, and he was saying that their turnovers kind of come in bunches, but they haven't been getting interceptions. So you can see that they're 131st in the country, and their sack percentage, like us, they're not really getting to the quarterback enough, and they're 116th in that category. When you look at our offense, though, the percentage that Ethan gets sacked is really, it's not good. It's 121st. And we are, when it comes to the percentage of interceptions that Ethan throws, he's not bad. He's kind of middling. He's around 49th. So there's not going to be a lot of turnover opportunities there on offense for us. And when it comes to passing yards per game, we're top 10. Believe it or not, who would ever thought that about a Rutgers quarterback? Top 20. We average 273 yards per game. Yards per pass, we're number 32. And as I talked about, our sack percentage is pretty high, so we have to keep Ethan out of those situations where he's getting happy feet, like he did early against Purdue, and basically all game against Oregon, he was being rushed all game. He needs to have a clean pocket, or at least have enough time where he has enough confidence to be able to deliver the ball and not see ghosts and not see a rush when it's not really there. Not hold on to the ball up too long. Occasionally, he still does that a little bit. Special teams, Illinois' field goal kicker doesn't miss. Hits all his extra points. I think he's missed one field goal. So we'll have to be, I'm not sure what the weather's going to be like, but I'm sure we'll have to be on our game when it comes to special teams. And I know Coach was saying with our 22 injuries, a lot of that is depth on the special teams, and not having Dino Calicamanis. You can see how in there on special teams, you can see how the special teams are affected. So special teams are going to have to be no boneheaded plays. Might come down to the rushing game, as I talked about a little bit before. Illinois has a three-headed monster with Egan, Lagery, and Valentine. Between them, they have the 1,200 yards by committee. And with us, between Antoine and Jay Sean, they have about 1,000 yards between them. So when it comes to yards per rush, we talked about this earlier, Illinois is 119, so that's 3.3. And the yards per game, they are 115th at just under 109 yards per game. And we're very, very similar that way. When we run the ball, we average, I want to say it's 3.8 yards per game. And Illinois' defense against the rush, so. When it comes to yards per rush, it's 4.5. It's better than ours, which is a little higher than that. Rushing yards per game, they're kind of, mid in the 60s somewhere. So you'll give up, 4, 5, 6 yard chunks at a time. But at the end of the game, they're going to kind of manage it and bend but not break. When it comes to turnovers, both these teams are pretty well coached when it comes to not turning the ball over. Illinois, statistically, when it comes to turnovers and the giveaways versus the takeaways, they're kind of mid, but they're not going to turn it over a lot. But they have had 5 in the past 2 games. Of course, those are against a couple pretty good teams. So they haven't been intercepting the ball, but they've gotten 8 fumbles. So they're Johnny on the spot, right? Good timing, right spot at the right time. And when it comes to, for us, when it comes to turnovers, obviously we don't get the interceptions. And we don't get a lot of takeaways. We're 121 in interception percentage on defense. We're around 100 in takeaways per game. But the offense, like Illinois, they're kind of average. They don't turnover that we've only had 2 fumbles this year, 1 each of the past 2 weeks. So if Illinois does excel at turnovers on fumbles, we're going to have to avoid turning the ball over and putting it on the ground this week to have some success, especially if we think it might be close, one of those 35-31 kind of games. Both teams very well coached when it comes to penalties on offense. Illinois, when it comes to offensive penalties, they're generally ranked fairly well in the number of penalties per game, top 35. Penalty yards per game, 25. Defense, struggles a little bit more, but not terrible. They're kind of mid. Actually, they're kind of mid. Number 40 in penalty yards per game and number 60 in the amount of penalties that their defense gives up against the opposing offense. So hopefully we can get a well-timed defensive penalty. Some thought last week against Purdue that we got a call we probably shouldn't have, but nonetheless, Rutgers offense, as you might expect, very good. We're top 16 or top 10 in penalties per game, top 10 in penalty yards per game. Defensively, we're a little weaker when it comes to penalties per game and penalty yards per game. And I'd like to say untimely penalties at the worst times. I don't know if there's an advanced stat on that, but I'm sure that we're not real good at in that. in that regard. At time of possession, we, despite us liking to throw the ball, we have some long drives at a lot of plays. So we're number 20. We're number 10 in the country, and then on offense, and then Illinois is number 78. So you see, with Illinois, we want to avoid giving them the running opportunities like Purdue had, where they can extend drives, where they can score, and take their offensive efficiency and turn them into long drives where they possess the ball. That's 78th in time of possession in the country. So, and conversely, on defense, they don't get off the field a lot, which is also part of their struggle. So they're number 78 in that category. So there are opportunities against Illinois. I always felt this was a better matchup for us to have an opportunity to get, quote unquote, a big win and get to bowl eligibility. I thought it was a better matchup than Washington would have been, because we are kind of similar and they're not explosive like Washington, like Oregon, and that we had some opportunities. Now, that being said, would I be shocked, like I said, if we lost by 2 touchdowns, 41-27? No, I wouldn't be. What's the injury bug going to be like? That was a topic of discussion in the pregame press conference, asking, why is it every year that we have these injuries? And coach didn't want to take a stab at it, but it hurts. This was a year we thought we were going to have enough depth pretty much everywhere. Offensive line, that bugaboo has come back to haunt us. Wide receivers, a lot of the young guys, Michael Thomas III, they're, in addition to Ian, hopefully Ian will be ready. That would give us some hope from making some downfield passing plays to keep us in the game against Illinois, at least on offense. On defense. And so this game has the opportunities that we might not have against the more explosive Washingtons, Oregons. We know what's going to happen against Ohio State. And Maryland, you can't sleep on Maryland, because with Malik Washington, 4 or 5-star quarterback, whichever rating service you listen to, has been able to make some plays. We can't let him have a big game, throwing 300 yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns. So I feel that we have an opportunity here. This is kind of, it's always this week's game. That's the biggest game of the year. And this will be the biggest game of the year. Because if we can get the 5, then it comes down to Maryland. And that game at home will be the one for bowl eligibility. I know people are licking their chops at Penn State. Somehow, people will go in expecting a win, and I just don't feel that, even though they're not explosive offensively, and that's part of the reason why James Franklin was fired, the lack of quarterback development, and not being able to win the big games. But I still think they have the talent to beat us, and until I don't know how many, I forget how many in a row we've lost to them, but the best opportunities for us this week against Illinois and Maryland, get to bowl eligibility, and then it's off to the Bronx once again. But nonetheless, there you have it, everybody. Enjoy Halloween night. Be safe tonight. It's going to be crazy weather, crazy winds, probably a lot of crazy Halloween madness going on. So trick or treat. Let's hope there's a treat this weekend for Rutgers fans against Illinois. Have a great weekend, and go are you.